Hey everyone, welcome to my video. My name is Steven Gruce. I am creating this video for my Comms 4365 class, that's nonverbal communication. I'm taking this class with Dr. Arrington. I had her like 2 or 3 semesters ago for our speech class, and she was a really great speech instructor for that class, so I'm looking forward to her feedback on these videos that I'm going to create to send in for this class. So for this video, I'm going to be going over 3 things from chapter 2, and that chapter was called haptics, which pretty much just means touch, and what type of nonverbal communication that goes into how we make physical contacts with each other, how we just how we make physical interactions with each other, and what type of nonverbal communication that is. So for the first thing I wanted to go over was, in the book it said from 14 months to 2 years of an infant's life, they receive the more touch and physical contact than they do from 0 months to 14 months. That's something that is stated in the book, and that is something that I could relate to because my brother, he has a little girl and a little boy. The girl, she is I think 14 months right now, and the little boy just turned 3. So we got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I know whenever they were both infants, I wouldn't really want to like touch them and hold them so much because they seem so like fragile. But I mean, I know I wasn't their parents, but just as their uncle, I just wouldn't want to touch them so much now. Especially the 3-year-old, he always comes up to me. I always want to like just tickle him and grab him and just stuff like that. And the little girl, she's kind of crawling around a little bit, and I like to just like mess with her hands or mess with her feet to make her laugh because she kind of has more reactions to stuff like that, and I just think it's really fun to just play with them like that. So that is something that I can kind of relate to just because of my nephew and niece. The second thing that I wanted to go over that I read from the book is kind of switching gears here. It talks about this continuum of touch, and it goes from like a business side of the continuum where it's just like handshakes, like somebody like setting some change in your hand if you're like at a cashier, and just like straight business stuff. And then it kind of creates like a little swing. So on this side we have all the business, and this side it would be like an intimate relationship, and between there is like friendship and like close friends, kind of how you interact with it physically. And one thing that it said in there that is one thing that made me think of, it was like professional touching. It made me think of teachers, how they can kind of blur the line between like professional kind of interactions with students physically and like kind of friendship. It made me think of like if a girl is doing her work and at a desk or something, and the teacher will come up behind her and kind of like place his hand or something on her shoulder. Like the teacher, usually it's an older teacher, so he'll place his hand on her shoulder and just kind of just like looking at her work or whatever, and then the girl will be like, like don't touch me. Like that's what that continuum kind of made me think of, kind of like that in between area between the business and the friendly touches. A lot of times the older teachers, they'll like maybe like place their hand on their shoulder or maybe like the middle of your back, and they'll think like, oh, it's just like, I'm just letting them know that I'm like behind them, like trying to look at their work or whatever. And the girl will be like, like she'll freak out, and the teacher will be like, hey, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to touch you in like any type of way. But that's just that fine line between that business. And some students, they'll feel it, they don't care. They're like, they'll show the teacher like, hey, like this is what I'm looking at, and the teacher will just be right there. They don't care. But just from person to person, like there's almost always that like one girl that'll be like, do not touch me. Like she'll be very adamant about that just because they want to keep it like so business, or they just don't want to be touched. But that's kind of that continuum is kind of what made me think. That's what that reminded me of, is that girl in the class who just doesn't want to be touched. And like that older teacher is just like, I wasn't trying to do anything. But that's just kind of what I thought of. The third thing that they went over the book is same-sex touching. So if it's just like male on male who is friends with each other, and female on female who are friends with each other, and just kind of how they interact physically with each other. One of the things that it said was men to men is less acceptable, or accepted, I guess, between other males than women, kind of how they interact with each other physically. Women are more likely, it said in the book that women are more likely to be more physically with each other, and men are less likely, and that's kind of less accepted because they are more homophobic. And I think that kind of reminded me of just how I act with my friends, because I'm like a very like touching person with my friends. Like if my friends ever doing something, I'll like, I don't know, kind of grab them and always like kind of, I don't know, if my friend's just walking by me, I'll like grab them and be like, ah, what's up, bro, like whatever. But sometimes a lot of my friends, they'll be like, oh bro, get off me, that's gay, or whatever. They won't say like maybe that harsh to me or whatever, but they'll be like, they'll kind of like try to make me stop. But whenever they do that, it just makes me want to grab them more, because I know that it makes them uncomfortable, and I think it's just funny. But I don't really recommend doing that to people who you really think, like, who would really think that's like actually uncomfortable for them. But these are people that I really know. But most of my friends, they're the same way as me. Like, we'll just mess with each other, grab each other and stuff like that, and we don't care, we don't feel uncomfortable. But there's just a certain amount of my friends who will just, they'll be like, ah, don't touch me, and it'll just make me want to grab them more, just because I think it's funny to make them uncomfortable. But that's just the relationship that we have, so I already know they're not going to be like actually like upset about it, but I just think it's funny to mess with them. But that was pretty much my third point over this chapter. I thought it was an interesting chapter, and I look forward to making the rest of the videos about the other chapters. All right, see y'all soon.